We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Tes Amud Aleph in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 29a. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that if a man makes his son a Nazir, so that is effective, but a mother is not able to make her son a Nazir. And so the Gemara said, what's the difference? Why is a father able to do it and not a mother? Rabbi Yochanan said the reason is it's a halacha by Nazir. It's a halacha that this is just the case. It only applies to a father, not a mother. Amar Reish Lakish says a different reason. Kidei lechancho b'mitzvahs. The reason why the father is able to do that is because this is a form of chinuch. He's teaching his son about the mitzvah of Nazirus. Rashi says, Reish Lakish Amar Taima Sheish Madras Beno Benazir Kidei lechancho b'mitzvahs is a way of educating the son. Gemara says, if so, afilu isha nami, the same should be true by a woman also. Rashi says, v'imisham chinuch, afilu isha teim maderes as ben nazir. If it's an idea of chinuch, so even the mother should be able to make her son into a nazir as a way of chinuch. And the Gemara says, kasavar ish chayev l'chanech beno, because he holds no, only a man is chayev to teach a son, but mitzvahs is only chayev to teach a son mitzvahs, ve'ino isha chayev es l'chanech es beno. But a mother, a woman, is not chayev to teach her son mitzvahs. And the Gemara continues, B'shlam Rabbi Yochanan, Damar halachi b'nazir. I understand, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that this is just a halacha by tradition, this is a halacha by nazir, that it's for the father can make a son a nazir. So amti lahachi b'no in bito lo. So then we understand why it applies to his son and not his daughter. It's just a halacha. There's no reason you can't really ask on it. Elul Reish Lakish, but according to Reish Lakish, afilu bito, it should apply even to his daughter. Why does it only apply to the son? And the Gemara answers, Kasavar, because he holds no, b'no chayiv l'chancho. There's a mitzvah, there's a chayiv of chinuch to educate the son, but bito, eino chayiv l'chancho. When it comes to the daughter, there is no chayiv of chinuch. And the Gemara continues, B'shlam Rabbi Yochanan d'amar halachi b'nazir. I understand, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says this is a halacha by nazir, ahachi b'nazirusin b'nedarim lo. That's why this halacha applies specifically to nazirus and not to other kinds of vows. Elul Reish Lakish, but according to Reish Lakish, that this is for the purposes of education. Afilu nedarim nami, it should apply to other kinds of vows as well. And the Gemara answers, Lo mi boy kamar. It really means not only this, but even this. Meaning, Lo mi boy b'nedarim. We don't even need to tell you that by nedarim this is possible. To less lay nivel, because there you're not causing the person nivel. In other words, you're not preventing the person from having wine. You're not making it that the person cannot cut his hair. Ela afilu b'naziris, but even when it comes to naziris, the islay nivel, where there's something about that is degrading to the person is not allowed to have the wine, person's not allowed to cut his hair, so you might think there you're not allowed to do it for chinuch purposes. Afilu hachi chayiv l'chancho. Nevertheless, there is a chayiv of chinuch. And the Gemara continues, B'shalom Rabbi Yochanan, I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Yomer halachi b'nazir, who says it's just a halacha l'moshe misina by nazir. So hainu dekatani micha o shemichuhu krovav. That's why it says in the Mishnah that let's say he protests, then there would be no nazirus. Let's say the relatives protest, then there would be no nazirus. The idea is that's all part of the halacha l'moshe misina, that the person has to agree, the relatives have to agree. Elul Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Amar Reish Lakish, but according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Amar Reish Lakish, Kol Kaminehon Karovim the Amrin Leilo Sigmare Mitzvahs. Is it possible that the relatives are allowed to tell the father, don't teach a mitzvahs, we're going to cancel this Nazirus? And the Gemara says to that, Kasavar no, because he holds Kol Chinuch de lo Chashiv. Anytime you have a kind of chinuch that is not chashiv, it's not important, lo nichole. So that already is not going to be nichole. That already is not going to be something which has to be done. It can be canceled by the relatives. Rashi over here says, or canceled by the son himself. Kasavar Reish Lakish, what does it mean? Kol chinuch de lo chashivile. Any chinuch that's not important could go in chinuch de nazirus de bizionohu. Because when it comes to the chinuch of nazirus, that's already a bizayon. It's already a disgrace to come megaleach rosha, causes that he has to shave his head. Lo nichole livrei. That's already something that's not really good. It's not beneficial for the son. And it's for that reason that they're allowed to protest. And the Gemara continues, B'shalom Rabbi Yochanan, I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, Do Amar halachi b'nazir, who says it's a halacha, again, halacha l'moshe misina by nazir, misham hachi megalayach v'ovid hakaf. It's for that reason that the person at the end of the nazirus, he can shave his entire head and even do hakaf. In other words, if it's a doraisa, so you're allowed to do hakaf, you don't have to worry about leaving the sideburns, you don't have to worry about leaving the hair. It's of course, it's usher for a person to shave off all of his hair, but by nazirus, that's going to be okay. And here it's a halacha l'moshe misinai, it's something doraisa, so it's going to be okay. Elul Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Amar Reish Lakish, but according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, who said that Reish Lakish said Kedei lechancho b'mitzvahs, that the whole reason of this nazirus is really to just educate the son in mitzvah, so it's only the rabbanan. So ha'ka'avid hakafa, how could you shave at the end of the nazirus? You're violating the isser hakafa, and that's an isser doraisa. So how could this derabbanan nazirus come along and allow you to violate an isser doraisa? And to that the Gemara says no, kasavar, because he holds hakafas kolarosh midrabanan, the prohibition of shaving the entire head. That's only a prohibition midrabanan. V'chinuch midrabanan, and chinuch is also derabanan. V'yasi chinuch derabanan v'dachi hakafa derabanan, and the chinuch which is derabanan can come along and push off this halach of hakafa which is derabanan. And the Gemara continues, Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan Amar Halachi Benazir. I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says it's just a halacha, Lamoshe Misina by Nazir, Ahachim Megaleach Maisi Carbon. That's why if it's a halacha, it's doraisa, you can shave and you can even bring a carbon at the end of the Nazirus. Elul Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Amar Reish Lakish, but according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, who says the Reish Lakish says Kedei L'chancho B'mitzvahs, that the reason for this Nazirus is chinuch. So how could you bring a carbon? How come Maisi Chulin Lazar? You're bringing something that's not really a carbon because it's only a derabbanan Nazirus, and you're bringing that to the Azara. Shouldn't that be a problem? And the Gemara says to that, Kosavar, no, he holds chulin ba'azara lav doraisa, that if a person brings chulin to the azara, that's not a prohibition on a doraisa level. And the Gemara continues, B'shlam Rabbi Yochanan Damar halachi b'nazir. I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says this is a halacha by nazir, ahachi ki metame. So for that reason, if the person, let's say, would become tame, so ma'isi karban sipor, and then he's going to bring a carbon with birds. V'yachal kohen malika, and the kohen will perform malika, which really isn't a real kind of shchita unless you're bringing a carbon, unless you're doing so in the Beis Hamikdash, and that's fine though, because according to Rabbi Yochanan, this is a halacha by nazir. It's a halacha on a doraisa level. There's no problem with the kohen doing malika and eating the bird, eating the carbon. But according to Rabbi Chanina Amar Reish Lakish, so really it's not a real shchita over here, and it's not a real carbon because it's only a derabbanan nazirus. So isn't it a problem that he's eating the vela? And to that the Gemara says, Kasavar ke Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. No, he holds like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda's shita, the ein shchita la'of min Torah, who holds that there is no shchita, there's no halacha that you have to do shchita on a bird on a doraisa level. And furthermore, again, like we said, v'chulin ba'azara lav doraisa. He also holds that chulin in the azara is not a prohibition on a doraisa level. That's why it's okay in this situation, even if the nazirus is midrabanan. But the Gemara continues, v'sava Rabbi Yossi hachi. Does Rabbi Yossi really hold like this, that there's no shchita for a bird min Torah, and also that chulin bazar is not midoraisa. Vatanya, but we learn in the brisa as follows, and this brisa will be explained by Rashi. The brisa says, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says, Minayin lechatos ha'of shehi ba'al ha'safek. How do we know that a bird, carbon chatos, is brought even in a situation of doubt? She'ein nachelas. How do we know that in such a situation that carbon is not going to be eaten? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, V'hazav ezovo la'zachar v'la'nekeva. It puts zachar and nekeva next to each other in the pasuk. Makish nekeva la'zachar tells us to compare female to male. Mazachar may be carbon alavadai, just like a zachar brings a carbon on a situation where there is no doubt. Af nekeva may be a carbon alavadai, so too a female brings a carbon in situations which are certain where there is no doubt. Umazachar may be alasafik, and just like a male brings a carbon in a situation where there is a doubt. Af nekeva may be alasafik, so too a female brings a carbon in a situation where there is a doubt. Umazachar mimin mevi alavadai mevi alasafik, and just like by a male from the same species that which you bring a carbon in a situation where there's certainty, it's from that same species that you bring the carbon in a situation of doubt. Af nekeva, so too by a female, mimin shehi mevi alavadai, from the same species that she brings in a situation of certainty, mevia al hasafik, she also brings in a situation of doubt. And so the Gemara says, Ima zachar mevi carbon v'nechal. Now, if you're going to say, whereas by a male the carbon is brought and it's eaten, af nekeva mevi a carbon v'nechal, maybe we should even go so far as to say that the comparison extends here also, that by a female also she brings the carbon and it is eaten. Amrit, so they respond to that as follows, that is not the case. Rashi over here says, Minayin l'chatas ha'of shaba ala safik. How do we know that a bird chatas is brought in a situation of doubt? Kagon deleda o deziva she'ena nechelas. What we mean to say is, let's say you have a woman who gives birth, but it's a situation of doubt. We're not sure if she really gave birth to a viable baby, or let's say you have a situation of ziva, that's kind of tumah, an emission that comes from the body. Also, there can be a suffix situation. How do we know that even though you're bringing this chatas ha'of, how do we know that it's not eaten? So again, that's what this brisa is discussing. Talmud lomar v'adava b'nidasa v'azav ezovo lahakish nekeva l'zachar. Again, it's all a comparison. We compare female to male. Mazachar maybe carbon behema al vadai. Now, just like by a male, the carbon on a certain sin is not a bird, it's an animal. Achal chayla b'shogeg, for example, let's say we know for sure, the person knows for sure that he ate chayla, he ate fat, which was not kosher, he did it by mistake. So he brings a carbon behema. Vuadin levadai ziva. The same also is, let's say, you have a situation of vadai tomas ziva. The same would be true. So since just like that's true by a male, af nekeva mevia carbon al vadei leida chatas ha'of. So too by a female when she gives birth. The comparison is specifically from the case of a sin by a male to a case of giving birth by a female. So if she gives birth for certain, so then she's going to bring a chatas ha'of. She'll bring this bird chatas. And ma zocher maybe asham taloi al safik. Now, furthermore, just like a male brings a carbon which is called an asham taloi, let's say he's not sure if he did this avera. Let's say a situation you're not sure if you ate chaylev. Af nekeva, so too by a female. Mevia carbon al safik later. That's what we're learning. By a safik, if the female gave birth, she also has to bring a carbon. Aval adayin lo shamanu im mimin behema im mimin ofa. We don't know what kind of carbon yet in a safik situation. Is it from an animal? Is it from a bird? Ela mimashalamanu shemevi zachar la safik meoso min. Shemevi al avade. Just like we know, though, that by a male, in a situation of doubt, it's the same kind of species as in a situation of certainty. Shaliola mivian behem, it's always an animal carbon that's brought by this male. Af nekeva, so too by a female by situations of birth. Mimin ha'ov shemevi al avade, from the same species of bird that's brought in a certain situation. Mevianame al safik leida v'ziva. You're also going to do the same thing in a situation of doubt of birth or a situation of doubt of ziva. In those cases, you're going to bring a bird carbon. Ma zachar mevi carbon al safik v'nechol. Now, just like a zachar brings this carbon in a situation of doubt, the asham taloi, and that carbon is eaten. Sharei asham taloi nechol. We know the carbon which is called an asham taloi is eaten. Af nekeva shemevi a carbon min ha'of al safik ein nechol. Maybe you're going to say that in a cave also, when she brings a carbon from a bird in a situation of doubt, that also should be eaten, and that's what the Brisa is addressing. That is not the case. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amud Beis.